How many of you guys are here for Sasquatch Chronicles? It's your crowd, man.
I just returned from Texas from doing the live shows, and there was issues with them recording my presentation, but I thought I'd share it with you. Here's what happened.
Black thing go from left to right, and I thought, I'm going to die out here. No one's ever going to know. And I couldn't believe what my eyeballs were showing me. I'll never forget how evil the eyes were. It was horrible. I mean, I've never seen nothing that evil.
It ran towards me at a rate that I can't even explain. Turned and stared at me, and this look of, I just want to kill you. I want to say it was human, but it wasn't.
He was yelling at me to grab a gun. I was like, for what? He said, just grab a gun. And there's footprints all the way to the door of my house. It had went inside my garage, all the way to the door.
911, what are you reporting?
Jesus Christ, you better...
Sir?
See ya!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh.
You're listening to Sasquatch Chronicles. Check us out online at sasquatchchronicles.com. If you've had an encounter, email me. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. I got invited to go do a live show with a bunch of other podcasters, Twisted Philly, Hillbilly Horror Stories, who put it on, and The Confessionals with Tony Merkel. And I got invited to come down there and do a live show, and I thought, nah, I'm not really interested in doing a live show. And then they said, well, it's going to be in Texas. And, you know, I love Texas. Any excuse I can go down to Texas, I'll go. So I agreed to it. And then I thought, what in the world am I going to, am I going to have a witness up there? Question and answer seems kind of hokey. I want to do something special for, if I'm coming to Texas, as much as I love Texas, I want to do something special for everyone who shows up. So I picked up the phone and I called Bob and I said, Bob, would you come down to Texas with me? And I want it to be like a paid vacation for you. I don't want you to worry about anything. And he said, yeah, well, of course. He goes, I'd be happy to go down there. And he goes, well, what are we going to do a presentation on? And he, Patterson Gimlin, and I said, no, I don't think so. I said, we've done that on the show before. I think I'll tell the story about the day I quit the show. It involves Bob. And I don't know if many people know this story or not, but I'll tell it to you now. In order to tell you that story, I have to tell you this story first, and I'll back it up even more than I did with the live show. When I first got the idea for Sasquatch Chronicles, I wanted to create a safe place for people to come forward, share their encounters, and maybe we all can learn more about what this thing is that people are running into. And I wanted to create a cool show that anyone could listen to. Your friends, your family, something you'd sit around with your buddies, have a beer, listen to the show. That's the environment I wanted to create for the show. So anyway, I had this great idea for a show. And went down to a bunch of radio stations because I didn't know how to do a podcast. I had no clue I still have no clue what I'm doing, but I had no clue really how to do a podcast. And so I was still thinking radio mode. So me and Woody went down to a bunch of radio stations and pitched our idea for this. And everyone said no. And there's a major radio station in Portland, Oregon. I won't mention it, but we went in there and talked to the program director, and he goes, you guys have 6 minutes to sell me on your idea. And so we quickly went through it. What the idea for Sasquatch Chronicles, basically is what you guys are hearing, was the idea. And I remember he looked at me and goes, no one's ever going to listen to a show where people call in and talk about their encounters. No way. I have over 30 years in radio, and you have a terrible voice, your brother has a terrible voice, and no one will ever listen to this show. You're wasting your time. Go focus on doing something else with your life. And so me and Woody walked out of we walked out of the office, and we're walking out to the car. And I remember Woody kind of had his head down. We get in the car, and he goes, "Well," and Woody goes, "My brother." He goes, "Well, I guess that's it, huh?" And I go, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Maybe he's right. Maybe no one will listen to it, you know." And I said, "He's wrong. He's dead wrong. We're going to make this show happen without a radio station." And that day, Sasquatch Chronicles was born. We have no money, we have no equipment, we have no experience podcasting, and I just had this great idea, or again, what I thought was a great idea, and so I went down to Goodwill and I bought Guitar Hero mics or USB plugins. I think they're like $4 or $5, and they actually worked for a long time. I used it for about the first 200 episodes, maybe even 300. It's been so long now, I don't remember. I still have the mic, but so we had everything planned out. We had a format, how we wanted to start the show, how the show should sound, and kind of everything all laid out. We were ready to go, except one problem. No one would come on the show. No one wanted to share their encounters. And so I wasn't really sure what to do at that point. So we went to YouTube. Now, at that time, there was only like 8 or 9 encounters on YouTube. If you go on there today, there's thousands of them. When I started, there was like 8 or 9. And so I would cut those out, put them in the show, and then we'd talk about it. Next show, same thing. Next show, same thing. And we were starting to run out of content, as far as people telling their encounters. And finally, eventually, people started to come on the show. And they weren't real great encounters, but people started to come forward and share their encounters. We'd draw the show out as long as we could because we had no one else. We decided we got invited to Beachfoot. And Beachfoot is basically it's a fancy camping trip where a lot of people go. And the only reason why we went to Beachfoot is because Bob Gimlin was going to be there. And I really wanted to meet Bob. And I'd never met him before. And I didn't grow up with the whole Patterson-Gimlin film. That was before my time. But I really wanted to meet Bob. And, because when you have a podcast like this where it's about Bigfoot, having Bob on is like having Elvis show up to your show. You're going to roll out the red carpet, and I couldn't wait to meet him. So me and Woody go to Beachfoot. And when we get to Beachfoot, we're waiting for Bob. And there's this area at Beachfoot. It's like a pavilion. Everyone goes in there and drinks, and good times had by all. And we're in there, and I met Ron Moorhead for the first time. In person anyway, and Ron's a great guy. He did the Sierra Sounds. Great guy. Love Ron. Met Peter Byrne. He's a guy that stole the Yeti hand. And I'm just sitting around meeting all these people. I know the names, but I've never met them before. And me and Woody are sitting there, having a beer, having a good time. Pretty soon this car pulls up, and I see this guy get out with a cowboy hat. And I'm like, oh, it's Bob Gimlin. Woody starts nudging me. He's like, hey, it's Bob Gimlin. And I said, I know who it is. And I said, put your beer down, try and look respectable. We're going to really sweet talk this guy to get him to come on the show. We're going to really charm him. Woody, tell Bob that joke, when we get up there. And we're getting up to walk up to meet Bob, and he just gets swarmed with people. I mean, they just flood him. You almost couldn't even see Bob. I mean, he was almost disappeared in the crowd. And I remember I was so disappointed, and Woody said, well, let's go stand in line. And I said, I'm not going to bother the man. He can't get out of his car and walk from point A to point B without being surrounded. I'm not going to bother this man. And I was really disappointed because I wanted to meet Bob Gimlin. So this is now Saturday night. Nighttime has come. Bob's gone off to bed. And on Sunday, everyone generally packs up and they're gone by like 9 or 10 in the morning So that we had missed Bob all day, and we knew we weren't going to get a chance to really meet him and see if he would come on the show, beg him to come on the show. And so I was kind of disappointed. I go off to use the bathroom, and Woody and this other guy, Shane, are in the pavilion. And I go off to the bathroom, to the outhouse, and I come out, and I'm walking back to the pavilion, and I see Bob Gimlin standing there. He's got his cowboy hat on. He's talking to Woody and Shane. So I go running across the parking lot because I'm like, this is it. This is my chance to meet him. And I remember he's kind of holding up a glass of water above his head. And as I was coming up, it looked like he was doing like cheers to the guys, like cheers, fellas. And I'm walking up, and they kind of tell me, you know, Bob had been hurt and he was recovering or something, some accident with his horse. I didn't really get what they were saying. And I walk up and I'm shaking his hand. I'm like, oh, it's so good to meet you. And totally went fanboy on Bob. I mean, I was so I'm sure Bob thought I was going to hump his leg. I'm just excited. And I start slapping him on the shoulder. And I'm like, you tough SOB, look at you. You with the way you still riding horses, you tough SOB. And I'm just, you know, tapping him on. Keep in mind, we'd been drinking most of the day. And I thought I was being friendly. And I was like, yeah. And as I'm slapping him on the back of the shoulder, I see that glass getting lower and lower and lower and lower. Pretty soon, Bob, it goes, well, I'm going to go off to bed. Have a good night, guys. And he walks off. And I turn around to Woody and Shane, and I said, man, wasn't that amazing? I mean, we finally got to meet the guy. And they had a look of horror on their face. Both of them were pale. Their jaws were almost to the ground. And I said, what's wrong with you guys? And they proceeded to tell me what happened was Bob was out on his farm, and he got kicked by one of his horses, and it broke his back. And he crawled from the pasture all the way to his front door, but he couldn't lift himself up to open the door. And so he was laying there basically in a pool of blood, completely broken back. His wife finds him, brings him inside, and Bob thought he was going to die. He thought for sure he was going to die, and he said, I don't want to go to the hospital and die in a hospital. I'd rather die in my home. So if his wife put him in a chair, propped his head up with towels, and was feeding him soup for 3 days. And after 3 days, Bob decided, well, I guess I'm not going to die. Maybe I should go to the hospital. Well, he broke his back. He wasn't doing cheers to the guys. He was holding up a glass of water to show it with the guys. After a year of rehabilitation, I can hold this up. A year ago, I couldn't do this. And then he had some donkey come along, start slapping him on the shoulder. I thought, oh, no. And I was so upset with myself, and because I really thought, maybe I really hurt this guy. I thought Bob Gimlin's never coming on the show now. So I try and find him, can't find him, and I go to bed that night, and I was just thinking about it all night. You know, I can see the headline, Sasquatch Chronicles kills Bob Gimlin at Beachfoot, and I was so worried about it. Next day I found Bob, and I said, Bob, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that, I mean, what do you say beyond I'm sorry? I mean, really, and I was just like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt. I hope I didn't hurt you, and Bob was so gracious. He was so kind about it. He said, don't worry about it, Wes. Didn't hurt one bit, which is funny because after we became friends, he was like, yeah, that hurt like hell. But he was so gracious and took the worry away from me. And there's no way I'm going to ask this guy to come on the show. I'm just happy that he accepted my apology. And so we leave Beachfoot. So the show goes on. More and more people are coming on. The show's becoming really popular. My brother had to leave as one of the hosts. He had a son, and it was taking up all his time, so he left. And there was a lot of infighting going on with the show, how the show should sound. You know, I always thought the guest should talk 80% of the time and let the person explain what happened before you start interrogating them. And I never wanted it to be an interrogation. But anyway, long story short, a lot of infighting, a lot of arguing behind the scenes, and I always make the joke that you don't really want to know what goes into sausage. You want to put mustard on it and eat it, but don't tell me what goes into it. So I never bored anyone with all the infighting that was going on. But anyway, my co-host leaves. I get branded a liar and a hoaxer, and, you know, my encounter never happened, and on and on and on. And I mean, And the Bigfoot world is such a nasty place. These people, I always say I'm not a part of the Bigfoot world because I don't want to be a part of it. But, you know, and I'm getting, and I'm not telling you guys this portion of it to, you know, poor me or boohoo for Wes. It's kind of an important part. You know, I'm starting to get death threats by the phone, social media. I mean, just a barrage of threats. And they're calling me all hours of the night, you know, during the day. They're even calling my mother. And I had enough. I absolutely 110% had enough. And I remember I was sitting in my apartment and Woody had stopped by and I kind of had my arms crossed and I was looking at the screen and he goes, "What's going on?" I said, "I'm done with the show." He goes, "No, you can't be done." Yeah, I'm done with the show. He goes, "But you have to," and I go, "I don't have to do anything." I go, "I've had enough. I've 110% had enough of everyone's BS, being dragged through the mud, being called a liar, being called on and on and on and on. I'm done. I've had enough. And the show's over with. I'm not doing it anymore. You know, nothing could change my mind at this point." And it's weird because sometimes life has a weird way of helping you out. I get a phone call. And it says Yakima, Washington. Now, I don't know anyone in Yakima, Washington, but I've been getting enough phone calls. You know, I'm ready to let someone have it at this point. And I pick up the phone. I go, "Hello?" And this voice on the other end, and Bob laughed when I did this during the live show, but the voice on the other end goes, "Well, hi, I was trying to reach Wes." And I always tell Bob that's my impression of him. And I go, "This is Wes." And he goes, "Well, hi, Wes. This is Bob Gimlin. I don't know if you know, we met a couple of years back. Of course, I remember meeting Bob Gimlin, but I didn't think this was Bob. I thought someone was playing a joke. So I was really a jerk to him for about the first 2 minutes until I realized it really is Bob Gimlin." And Bob starts going into what happened with the Patterson-Gimlin film. But not just the film. He tells a whole story before the Patterson-Gimlin film, what happened when they filmed Patty, and then what happened afterwards. And Bob started telling me really the whole story, and I'd never heard any of this before. And he was telling me that, you know, all the things that Roger Patterson did to him after the film, terrible things, it got to the point where I was starting to hate Roger Patterson after listening to Bob tell the story. And then Bob goes, "You know, Wes, Roger was dying of cancer and he wanted to see me. And so I went and saw him." Now, after everything Bob just told me, there's no way I would have went and seen Roger Patterson, but he did. And he said, you know, it was right before he was going to die. Everyone knew he was going to die except for Roger. And Bob said, "You know, Wes, I made peace with him. And I forgave Roger that day. For all the nonsense he did to me, I forgave him that day." And he said, "Do you want to know why forgiveness is such a powerful tool?" And I said, "Well, why, Bob?" And I wasn't ready to forgive anyone at this point. And Bob goes, "You know, forgiveness is such a powerful weapon and a tool to use. When you forgive someone, it has nothing to do with them and everything to do with yourself." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "When you forgive someone, they no longer live in your world. They no longer take up rent in your head. You've let it go at that point." And he goes, "That's why forgiveness is such a powerful weapon to use." You know, that always stuck with me because I always looked at forgiveness as a weakness. Someone who's weak would do that. And Bob said, no, it's quite the opposite. It's for the strong. Forgiveness is for strong people. And, you know, it just meant the world to me. He would call me. You know, he really lifted my spirits up at a time where I was at rock bottom. And at the end of the conversation, Bob goes, "Oh, and by the way, Wes, if you'd like, I'd be happy to come on your show and have you interview me just to show my support for all this nonsense I see going on." And that meant the world to me. And, you know, it just meant everything to me that he would do that for me. You know, the guy's a legend. He doesn't have to call me, doesn't have to be nice to me, doesn't know me. And for him to do that, that meant the world. And I'm trying to hook up the microphones, and I'm like, "Hang on, Bob, you know, I almost got it here, guy." And Bob said, "Well, I got to go out and bale hay." And I'm thinking, "Bob, you're an 80-year-old man. What are you talking about baling hay?" And he's like, and then I got to feed the horses. How about after supper around 6 o'clock? Would that work out okay for you? It just meant the world to me. I remember hanging up the phone, and Woody said, who was that? I said, that was Bob Gimlin. He goes, he's going to come on the show, isn't he? And I said, yeah. And he goes, you're going to keep doing the show, aren't you? And I said, I'm going to do one more. And that was episode 90. And here we are, episode 540. And I want to thank you, Bob. You know, I thanked him after the whole event. And when I told him before we went down there, I want this to be a paid vacation. I want him to relax and just come down and enjoy the moment. And when he was leaving for the plane, I saw him the night before. And I was talking to Bob, and I just said, hey, Bob, you know, it really meant the world to me that you would come down and be there for me to tell this story. You know, there's a lot of people that love the show, and it means a lot to a lot of people. And it would have never became what it became unless without you. And he kind of teared up, and I said, you know, stop it. You're going to make me tear up. And at that moment, I kind of realized it meant a lot to Bob, too. You know, not only did it mean a lot to me, but it meant a lot to him to come down there. And I want to thank all the fans that showed up down there, had a great time. Thank you again to Hillbilly Horror Stories and Twisted Philly and the Confessionals. Everyone did a great job. Had so much fun with you guys down there. And the people in Dallas going bowling, doing the meet and greet, had a blast with you guys. And even though Tony Merkel beat me in bowling, had a blast with everyone down there. And I just want to thank everyone in Texas again. You guys really know how to make a hillbilly feel like family down there. And that's the story of the day I quit Sasquatch Chronicles.
So I put my spirit little